Hi, BookTube. My name is Daniel. Welcome back to my channel. Guilty Feet. Stick it up your jumper. I've got a rhythm. And today I'm going to do something a little different, trying to try some different things. I've been kind of in a rut, producing one video a week of Friday reads and talking a lot about the books that I finished that week. And today, prompted by one of the books that I finished last week, I'm going to drill down on one particular author. I'm not really, I guess, maybe it's sort of where to start with this author or where not to start with this author, but I think, everything she ever wrote, including her latest release. And so we'll talk about those, and then I'll publish this today, and then tomorrow I'm going to do a Friday reads, but with more of a discussion. Try and prompt a discussion and see what you think about that. So let's start today with Jhumpa Lahiri, and I'll take you through her published works and my experiences of them, and then a little review of her most recent novel, which I haven't seen spoken about very much on BookTube, which is both a shame, but odd, because I think a lot of people would. Anyway, let's talk about it. So first off, I discovered Jhumpa Lahiri probably the same time everyone else did. Well, clearly not the same time everyone else did, because some people discovered her early enough and then awarded her the Pulitzer Prize. But having won the Pulitzer Prize in 2000, I believe, yes, it even says it on the front of my book, winner of the Pulitzer Prize in 2000. This was the first of her books that I picked up, and it's a collection of short stories. I don't think it's so unheard of for short story collections to win major prizes. It doesn't happen in the Booker, for example. The Booker is very novel based, but I think Binocular Visions, Edith Perlman's collection of short stories, won at some point, and sometimes prizes. I've seen some major prizes awarded for collections of previous short stories are collected, and a collected edition wins a prize. Ellen Gilchrist won the National Book Award way back when, in the 84 or something, for Victory Over Japan. Anyway, so it wasn't, I don't think groundbreaking, but still an interesting choice. And I picked this up. I bought this in Israel. So this was a time pre-internet, probably, where if I wanted to read something, I went into a bookshop here and saw, oh, that's new, and it's looked digestible, short, and then turned out to be short stories. And I never really differentiated between short story collections and novels. I just and then later I came to realize that many people do. Oh, I don't read short stories, or I read one short story in a collection, put it down, and go and do something else. No, I read a short story collection like I read any other book from cover to cover, and sort of develop a holistic sense of the collection. So often, if the collection is very bitty and very diverse, then it's harder for me to get a grip on it than if there seems to be some a tone of voice permeating through the whole thing, and the sensibility permeates through the whole thing. Then it doesn't matter if the stories have wildly different subjects. Raymond Carver, for example, none of those stories are the same, but I read when Shortcuts, the movie, came out, the Robert Altman movie came out, everyone went back to Raymond Carver. I discovered him at that point, and I read a great big collection with several of his collections all in one go, and had this profound aggregative impact on me of that voice in different stories across a whole collection. Anyway, Interpreter of Maladies was Lahiri's first collection, and catapulted her into the A-list because she won the Pulitzer Prize for it. My sense of it was very much at the time, I read some Indian authors of East Asian origin, and I was always looking for that connection between that outsider immigrant status as an American author of East Asian origin. I always felt there was some connection with Jewishness and that sort of outsider and being slightly different, and always, like we all do, we try and project ourselves and make connections. I had that very strong link the first time I read Amy Tan, Joy Luck Club, felt very Jewish to me. I think Arthur Miller writes in his book about The Death of a Salesman being produced in China, Salesman in Beijing. He says that and it's produced in Chinese, and he's working through a translator. I'm not sure if he was the director, but he was there talking them through this production. And one of the actors comes to him and says, "How did you manage to write such a Chinese play?" And I think there is parallels across cultures. Anyway, so I go into this, and these are stories of people on the outside of society. What Lahiri does, I think, differently to every other author is she makes no concessions. There is no underlying warmth or motivation, desperation to belong. The difference is the otherness of these characters is coldly noted. It's not used as to bridge gaps between cultures or to bring people towards you or to bring yourself towards others. It's just how it is, and those are her stories. So on the one hand, it's kind of cold and distancing, and that may be a phrase that I will repeat several times throughout, perhaps with the exception of one of these novels, which is not set away from places of origin. Cold and distancing, I think, maybe the underlying or the repeated phrase that one uses for Jhumpa Lahiri, and it's not a condemnation, it's not an attack. I think it makes her different to other authors. I think it draws the reader in because she makes no concessions to the reader. There is nothing there that says, yes, this is the other, but this is how we're all the same. No. This is the other, and this is the story. Interpretive Maladies is a terrific collection, very consumable if you've never picked it up. That was the first Jhumpa Lahiri I read, and it is marked 700. So I bought this July 2000, would have read it thereafter. The next one I've got this in a hardback, so I've gone straight from picking up a paperback, and somehow I have a hardback of her first novel, so that's a collection of short stories. I think, and it's lost in the midst of time, I think I got someone to send this to me for free. I think there was a site in the UK that was asking for reviewers, and I think, not paid at all, and I think I persuaded them to send me a copy of this, and because I don't think I would have laid out full price. This was $15.99 in 2003, which would have seemed a lot of money for a new hardback. I was not in a position to be paying hardback prices in those days, so I think I got this for free, and it's marked. I've marked it that I took this in December 2003, and this is Lahiri's first novel. The Namesake it's been made into a movie, I believe, with Cal Penn, I think, and it's a story of a young man called Gogol Ganguly, who named after the Russian author. That's the Gogol part, and his life and times in America. A terrific first novel, terrific any novel. Namesake, really good. I guess doesn't get talked about much in the sort of best books of the 21st century, but in the canon of Lahiri, I think it's an important one. If you don't do short stories, then this is probably where you should start. I'm not sure if the merits of telling people where to start with an author are exactly, but I think some people ask, top of the question, where should I start? I think Interpretive Maladies is perfectly fine. You'll get the point. You get through those stories, you'll understand exactly Lahiri's view of the other, the alien, the outsider in society, and let's say no concessions. It's always distant, it's always cold. So you want to get closer because the author is not reaching out to you. The author is telling a story. Anyway, Gogol Ganguly, wonderful, heartbreaking, moving. The Namesake. Then after that, I did buy this. I think I did buy this full price in hardback. It's got a deckled edge, which means I bought this in America. So this is from May 2008. This is Unaccustomed Earth. This is her second collection of short stories. Unaccustomed Earth, Pulitzer Prize winning author of The Namesake. So we got the first novel there, and the Pulitzer Prize was for the first short stories. This is another collection of short stories. It dates from a time when I was spending a lot of time traveling back and forth to the States, so I think I would have bought this from Amazon at the discount, so not full price, but as a new hardback, and had this sent to my office in Palo Alto. A terrific collection as far as I remember, although I can't pick out any particular stories from this. So this is 8 short stories, I believe. The short stories. Why am I saying this is short stories? It's definitely short stories, right? You were 8 stories, there you go. Longer and more emotionally complex than any other she has written. Yeah, it hasn't stayed with me as much, so probably not start there, if that's if that's what you're asking, which you won't. After that, we go back, we've got another novel, The Lowland, by Jhumpa Lahiri. This was shortlisted for the Booker Prize in 2013, so we've gone to 2000. This is 5 years between this and this. I got this in October 2013, so this is probably the point of, the Booker Prize is awarded that year. I don't remember who won it. It wasn't Jhumpa Lahiri, but I got this as a set of all 6 shortlisted novels. There was a website in the UK called thebookpeople.co.uk, is now sadly defunct, which for several years in a row bundled together hardback editions of the 6 shortlisted novels and sold them as one, heavily discounted. And I did it 3 or 4 years where I was, I would buy all 6 shortlisted novels, not the long list, like people now read the whole long list. That would have been unimaginable to me. But there are a handful of years where I read the entire shortlist, and this was one of them. And I've kind of fallen out of the habit with the Booker Prize the last couple of years. I sort of really I've been less involved, but in these days it was great. And Lowland is a great, untypical, I would say, Lahiri novel, in that it is set in Calcutta, set in India, and 2 brothers, one more radical than the other, and it is probably a more straightforward and more easily accessible story than some of her other work. I say this is the only of her books to date that is set in India. I'm not sure. I've looked at Lahiri's biography. I'm not sure if she spent much time living in India, despite the fact that her entire career is based on this outsider immigrant status, initially in the States and then later in Italy, which we'll get to. And this, I guess, fits into the sort of Khaled Hosseini group of novels of a writer writing about their family's origins and writing a story back in what Jews would call the old country, so to speak. Anyway, The Lowland, I enjoyed this. It was good seeing Lahiri's still relevant, still on a shortlist. And this is already 13 years after winning the Pulitzer Prize, shortlisted for the Booker. And I would say, a bit of in terms of the context of her career, this is, it's a solid mid-career novel. I don't think this would have won over new readers necessarily, but I was happy to have some fresh Lahiri content back in 2013. And then it went a little bit quiet, and I think this mirrored what was happening in Lahiri's life, where she moved with her family to Italy from the States, as far as I understand. Her husband may be an Italian. One second, I think I've got that wrong. Yeah, I don't remember. I looked up and then I've forgotten all about it. Anyway, she moved to Italy, and I think, if I remember correctly, so this is the next book that she put out, which is nonfiction. In other words, Jhumpa Lahiri, and I think she was learning Italian and then moved to Italy to immerse herself more fully in the Italian language. And if you're Jhumpa Lahiri and you're learning another language, you don't just learn the language. You don't just move to another country so that you really start to learn the language and love it and interact in it. You write a bloody book in the language. And this, in other words, is a book that Jhumpa Lahiri wrote in Italian and has been translated into English. Translated by, of all people, Anne Goldstein, who famously is the translator of Elena Ferrante, the Neapolitan novels, and other books of hers, and I believe has translated Primo Levi and all sorts of other people. So this was the first. So in other words, is the story of going to Italy and wrestling with the language and learning the language and then writing this book. This is a hardback edition which I picked up secondhand, got a date on it. May 2017 is when it came into my collection, and each page has the Italian and the English next to each other. So the entire length of the book is half the number of pages, because half of these pages are Italian, and it's facing. I don't read Italian, so I ignored every second page and only read the right-hand page, which was in English. Just an astonishing thing for a 21st century writer to do, to go and start publishing in a whole other language. I think it's really, I can't think of another example. I think, we know Nabokov wrote originally in Russian and then wrote in English, but I'll challenge anybody to name an author of the canon, a successful author. Steve Donoghue is accepted for this because I'm sure he could reel off a list of 30, who published novels that they had written in two completely different languages. And let's make it even more complicated. Anybody whose original language was English, who then now I'm making assumptions that Jhumpa Lahiri's mother tongue was English. Okay, scrap all of this on my ignorance and privilege and horse shit. Anybody who has written and published books in two different languages, I'd be keen to know if you have other examples. This is just a fascinating read because it's a real transition, and we're going to get to why this is a transition in just a second. Written by Jhumpa Lahiri in Italian, translated by Anne Goldstein, and it's a non-fiction about her discovering that ability to work in a whole other language, start thinking another language, and to explore and play with words and sentences and paragraphs in another language. So it's a fascinating. It's a writer's book, and for Lahiri readers, it's probably completists only. I picked it up secondhand, so I would have paid not so much for it, and enjoyed it. Then the next book, I don't know if this book even exists, except I have a copy right here, and this is Jhumpa Lahiri, The Clothing of Books. And why I say I don't know if it exists, because if you see there in the very small print, it says for sale in India and Nepal only. And the URL is www.penguin.co.in. So I don't know how I have this. I'm guessing the reason I have this book is I was searching for Jhumpa Lahiri on some secondhand website, and this came up as an option. So I bought it. I don't know how much it would have originally cost. There's an ebook available. I don't know if that's only available in India and Nepal, so I don't know if you go to any of your ebook suppliers now and try and search for Jhumpa Lahiri, The Clothing of Books, whether you will find it. The whole thing is 70 pages, a nice big print, and I bought this also in May. So I bought these. I think I bought these together at the same time, maybe from World of Books or whatever secondhand book store, online bookstore I was trawling at that time. In this deeply personal reflection, Pulitzer Prize-winning author Jhumpa Lahiri explores the art of the book jacket from the perspective of both reader and writer. And that's what it is. It's another book about books. In this case, the clothing of books. 70 pages. I can't tell you what its main thesis is, but I can tell you that 70 pages of an author that I love writing about books and their jackets was super fun. Anyway, let us get on to her most recent release, her 2021 novel, Whereabouts, which I was given by Cindy. I had this on my radar. I knew it was a relatively light read. I saw this when I was in London in June. I saw this in foils. I think they had the English version, which is, talking of the book jackets, we got a whole book about the clothing of books. This is a terrible bit of clothing for this book. There is a fabulous author photo of Ms. Lahiri. One second, let's have a look if we got the author photo from the first book. No, there's none. Let's see. Let's compare author photos over to there's that first one for the interpreter of Maladies. So that's 21 years ago. Ms. Lahiri, and then we have her giving eyeliner, just a fabulously fierce picture of Ms. Lahiri in 2021. The back is praised for. So this cover, the US cover is really weak, in my opinion, but let's leave that aside. Latest novel, 160 pages, written in Italian. So this is now not just a book about learning language, which is written in Italian and then was translated by Anne Goldstein. That was in other words. This is Whereabouts, an entire novel written in Italian and translated into English by the author. So this is the translated version. This was originally published in Italian by Jhumpa Lahiri. This is, as you can see, written in Italian and translated by the author. In the time since Anne Goldstein translated In Other Words for Jhumpa Lahiri has become the official translator for at least one Italian author that I know, Dominic Starnone, who I read his book Ties when it was longlisted for the Rooster a few years ago. I think that version was translated by Jhumpa Lahiri. I read it in English, obviously. So she's gone from writing in Italian, being translated by one of the great Italian translators, to translating her own work. Now, at the beginning, when I spoke about that distancing, that coldness that permeates every one of Lahiri's books, that view of the outsider that we never quite get to know, what could be more distancing than a book arriving and me reading a book that has already been translated from its original text? This is an author desperately putting distance between herself and her reader. Now, again, this is hugely egomaniacal to imagine that her reader must be a native English speaker who cannot read Italian. For her Italian readers, this is closer than previously, where when her books were written in English and had to be translated in order for things to do. She's now writing directly for an Italian audience. But for this reader, the idea that she has written it in one language and already by the time it gets to me, she has reworked and rethought and translated the original essence of her work has had to be translated before it crosses the page before my eyes. I find that sort of metaphorically beautiful because it's a part of Lahiri's whole journey and her relationship to at least this reader. This is a book narrated by a character with no name in a place with no name, and as you can tell from the title, Whereabouts, this whole book is about place in a way that most of her books have been about places. It's not just about the people in them, it's about their places, with the exception of the Lowland, which is very much about people and the story taking place in India. Everywhere else, these are people out of place, people who find themselves whereabout, by intention, by accident, moving through a place where they don't quite belong. Here we have an unnamed author, unnamed narrator, very, very short chapters, each chapter named after a specific place. So chapter 1, on the sidewalk, chapter 2, on the street, in the office, at the trattoria? I don't speak Italian. In spring, in the piazza. I really don't speak Italian. In the waiting room, in the bookstore, in my head, and so on. Everything is very, its location is very important and vital to the telling of these little stories. Each one, sometimes 1 page, sometimes 1.5 pages, so very digestible, with a clear through. This is a novel, this is not a collection of short stories. There is something happening in this story to this person in these whereabouts, in these places, their relationship to them, their sense of belonging and not belonging, and then a decision towards the end to go somewhere else. I thought this was just absolutely stunning. Maybe my favorite Jhumpa Lahiri book after 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 others, and I've enjoyed and got an enormous amount out of each of them. But Whereabouts, I haven't seen many people jumping on this year. It's been out now for a few months. It's a fine piece of work. If Lowlands was a sort of great, a perfectly acceptable mid-career novel, Interpreter of Maladies, the Namesake, great starts, short stories and novel starts to a career. Whereabouts is an author at the height of her powers, writing in a whole other language, translating it herself, deigning to translate for us mere English speakers, those of us able to read in one language only, who now eagerly await more work from this author, because the more she creates distance between her characters and the reader, between her as a writer and the reader, the closer I want to get, the more I'm drawn into this fascinating paradox of sharing but withholding, bringing you in but keeping you distant. Everything here is just tremendous. Highly recommend Whereabouts by Jhumpa Lahiri. And I hope this was an interesting look at Ms. Lahiri's career to date. I believe she's now back in the States. So she moved with her family. She's got 2 young boys. They moved and lived in Italy for a number of years, not 1 or 2, I think 3 or 5. But I believe she's back in the States now. Let me 1 second, it'll tell you right here. It doesn't tell you right here. Look up her bio. I'm sorry. I do these things, then find myself utterly unable to regurgitate them when the camera comes on. Really good. Whereabouts is fine. I hate this cover, but the book itself, get the English cover if you can, or if you care about that kind of thing. But no reason why you should. It's a great book. Jhumpa Lahiri's Whereabouts, and that is Jhumpa Lahiri. Not sure where you should start. Not sure where you shouldn't start. But that's a career in books. My career reading them. Not career. My last 20 years of reading. Enough talking, right? Bye.